Hello and welcome to today's workout. I wanted to start making videos in this way. I remember when I first started learning about exercise, I would watch RX Muscles in the Iron Asylum. And they were often black and white videos. And they would have Dave Palumbo interviewing the bodybuilder or the athlete that was shown in the videos. They would talk sometimes about the exercises, they maybe talk about nutrition. It was just a really cool way to learn more about the muscle building process. So I wanted to bring back those videos, and that's what we're starting with today. So here you can see I'm doing some bicep curls on the cable station. I did a set of 20, then some back rows to get a mid-back pump, which was kind of a break because I wanted to do basically a double set of curls. I want to get a really good pump on a shortened range of motion, then go into this heavier, fuller range of motion. And the back squeeze was also just a good way to kind of correct posture from sitting all day. So now that I'm sitting more at the computer writing programs for clients and facilities, I want to try to add in more postural work. So the idea of the 20 reps of curls, then the back rows for 10 reps, then curls for 10 more is just to get a really good pump. Having the cable set higher, you can see from the bottom, it lessens the weight load at the full extension of the bicep curl, but it's maximally loaded at the peak contraction. You can see here is it's heaviest when my forearms are perpendicular to the cable. So it's actually going to be heaviest at the peak contraction. This is a safer way to pump up and load the tissue because the muscle is less likely to be torn in the shortened range than in the long range. Since I have a previous history of bicep injuries, which was from strongman trying to lift stones and things like that, I have to be careful with how I train my biceps. I want them to grow, but I don't want to re-injure them. So I pump them up in this range of motion that's a shortened range of motion where the peak contraction is the hardest stimulus. This gets a really good pump. And then when I move to something that's a fuller range of motion that loads the tissues at the full extension, which is what these bicep curls do, it helps to create more damage because it has to pull open that pump. So I am loading the tissues in the more stretched position now, which would be riskier for a tear, but I don't need as much weight because I've already pre-pumped them in the shortened range of motion. So this is a tactic I've used to build my biceps even with previous injuries. I've done this with people without bicep injuries, and it's absolutely fantastic. They love it. So it's a great technique, whether you have injuries or not, to really get a good growth out of the bicep. And then I'm doing some lateral raises, which having them right after the curls just really pumps up the entire arm. So it's pretty miserable in terms of a really good pump. But this was a good warm up for the shoulders doing the high rep lateral raises. In the last set here, you can see I'm doing some kind of mini rest pause. I wanted to get to 20, but I felt like my technique was breaking down, so I had to take that little bit of a pause before I could get all the way to 20. Then on my heaviest sets of curls, I was doing slowed eccentrics. So I'm slow on the way down. And again, that's to help make more out of lighter weights to get a good bicep stimulus. So that's a good way to add more intensity to your bicep training rather than having to load more and more weight is to do those slower eccentrics. And then here was my top set of lateral raises. I ended up working up to 50 pounds for my top set of 10. Then after that circuit, I moved on to a new circuit. And the first movement of the circuit was cable lateral raises, but you can see the pulley set kind of at my hip, a little under my hip. This loads the movement in the full stretch. So when you do lateral raises against dumbbells, like or against gravity, it's maximally loaded at the peak contraction, but almost minimally to no loaded at the full extension. Here, the full extension, when the muscle is most stretched, it's actually the most loaded. And they've shown in studies for muscle development that loading tissue at a maximal capacity when it's maximally lengthened can actually create more muscular growth. So that's a nice fun variation and very complementary variation to working against gravity is to do a higher cable setting for cable lateral raises. I then was doing what I call standing concentration curls. So rather than sitting on a bench or bending over and doing concentration curls the old school way, I'm just lazy and I like this variation. This helps to hit the upper outer peak of the bicep. So this actually is really great at creating separation between the bicep and the shoulder. And then I did some high rep overhead press. So all three of these movements are actually part of a circuit. You can see a full description of the workout in the description section of this video. So the first three movements were a circuit, and now these three movements are a circuit. So I did the lateral raises, the bicep curls, and then seated overhead presses. I did higher reps because I'm still going to be training my chest later in the week, so I didn't want my triceps to be too burned out for chest training. So this was a really good stimulus for shoulders because they were already pre-exhausted, but didn't annihilate my triceps and mess up my chest day. Now you'll see I'm going to go back through these three movements, but actually showing a technique that I like to use called a double set. And I do this on smaller, more isolated movements when I want more intensity for muscle damage, but the movement is an isolated movement. It doesn't lend itself well to heavy maximal weight loads. You'd have to break technique, or it's just not a movement that allows for, like, say, 70, 80, 90 pounds on a side lateral raise. So I did a set of 10 on each arm, and then I'm coming right back to each arm again. So that's a double set. So I did a set on each arm, then I'm going right back to a set on each arm before I would take a break or before I move on to another exercise. I like the idea of the double set because the first bout of effort, whether you do 10 reps or a different rep range, it burns and it's challenging, but the muscle can recover relatively quick. So by the time you do the other limb and then you come back to the original one, the second bout of effort is crazy intense, and it's a really good way to push the muscle further into tissue stress and tissue damage, which creates more growth. Here on the concentration curls, I did the same thing. For this, I am looking kind of towards the arm that's moving because I want my chin out of the way. So I'm not necessarily looking at my arm to hopefully see if it's growing, but I'm getting my chin out of the way so I can curl more towards the ear of the opposing side of the head. And that's a great position, like I said, to get that upper outer bicep that creates that separation between the bicep and the shoulder. So if you're looking for more of that, this would be a fun exercise to try. Again, I did the double sets. For today, I was doing around 10 reps of things. I think some I might have gotten 11 or 12. I wasn't counting too much. I knew I was around 10. The idea for me more so is if I know I'm around a good rep range that represents the time or attention that I want, I don't count too much. I worry more about the quality of the contraction. So on each of these, I'm really flexing and squeezing at the peak contraction. Then here's the top set of dumbbell presses. I think I only got 17 here, but it was pretty good. So for all the pre-exhaust work, and this was the last round, I ended up getting the 80s for 17, so I'll take that. Over time, next time I repeat, if I were to repeat this workout, it's probably not going to be the exact same workout. I tend not to repeat the exact same workouts. But if I'm in a pre-exhausted state doing overhead presses again, I'll see if I can try to beat 17 reps for 80. If I was more fresh state, I could definitely do more weight, but I just would rather do it pre-exhausted, get more of a shoulder growth, and annihilate my triceps. Here was the last thing I finished with was a couple straight sets of a leaning forward, kind of a weird upright row, reverse fly thing. I'm using the Sorinex Bulldog pad, but you could do this without the Bulldog pad. I just liked it because it makes the movement a little more strict for me. This is an extremely weak position for me. I don't have the greatest upper back development, in my opinion, but this is a way I'm working on correcting that, is getting into this position and just roughing it through what feels like a very, very weak movement for me. I believe I was doing sets of 10 to 12, somewhere in there, but only like 25 pounds. So this isn't something I can load very heavy, but over time I'm hoping to be able to fix that and build that tissue up. I want to have more muscle across my shoulder blades, as it helps when you look at somebody from the side. If they have a very muscular upper back, it's a very, very athletic look. I don't want to have like the forward slumpy shoulders and look unathletic. So this was the last movement that I finished up with. So I hope this was kind of fun to hear the talk through and hear some of the reasoning and exercise tips. If you like this kind of video, just let me know in the comments section and I'll make more of them. You can also find out more from us on our website. You can learn about our daily podcast. We have over 1,900 episodes, which is ridiculous, but you can find all of them on the website. Thank you for watching, and I hope it was helpful.